Welcome to CSEC Biology TCP. I am Mr. Wilson from the TCP Academy. You can find us online at tcp-academy.teachable.com. Today we're going to be looking at abiotic factors for the CSEC syllabus biology. That is the impact of abiotic factor on living organisms. Abiotic factor are the physical/slash non-living component of the environment, which can be divided into three categories. First, edaphic, that has to do with soil, aquatic, that has to do with water, and climate. Soil. Last year, many students differed on their CXC exams as they were afraid of failure due to their level of readiness. This year, Mr. Wilson and his experienced team from tcpacademy.teachable.com is here to help you get exam ready. Subscribe for free to tcp-academy.teachable.com. We offer courses in CXC Biology, HSB, English Language, and many others. There are several offerings to each course. Enroll in one today. Soil is a major component of any ecosystem as it provides landing or support for all organisms. Soil is commonly grouped based on size of particle. The size of a particles will determine the water holding capacity, air content of soil, mineral holding capacity, and how easily plant roots penetrate. In ascending order from smallest to largest, would have been clay being the smallest, hence it's able to hold water because the particles are so closely attached because they're really, really small. Then next, suitable for agriculture crop production is going to be loam, as the particles are not so close as they were for clay and not as small either. Sand is really porous and is pretty much used in construction. And of course, crops like orchid or grapes might find this particular soil type to be favorable. Gravel, the particles are really far apart and they are large. Components of the soil, if we were supposed to look at soil can be divided into four major components: mineral holding 45%, water 25%, humus 5%, and soil air another 25%. Now, this is pretty much the composition of the soil, or as we call this chart, components. Let's look at soil water. Soil obtain water from the rain, dew, and or irrigation. The importance of the water is that plant uses this water for the process of photosynthesis as it dissolves minerals as well. It keeps the soil moist and of course it allows soil organism to move through the soil pretty easily. It prevents soil organism from being dried out or from experiencing desiccation, which pretty much means the same thing. Soil air. Air forms a major part of the soil and is found between the particles. The importance of air, we can just pull. Air is a mixture of gases. So the syllabus wants us to look at oxygen, which is responsible for aerobic respiration in soil organism, and it's also very important for the process of decomposition. Nitrogen is important for the soil as plants are using the nitrate to, of course, make nitrogen. Carbon dioxide is another important gas from respiration, and it is used in the process of photosynthesis. Soil mineral is very important for the health of plant, and we could just very easily reach for magnesium, which is important for the process of photosynthesis. Soil pH. Without adequate pH, plants are not able to absorb the mineral ions as they would have. So the soil must have a pH that is pretty much fitting to allow the plant to have access to the mineral ions. Soil humus improves soil air by forming soil crumbs. And what that does is to allow the soil particle to really come together, forming little crumbles. Uh, it improves the soil water holding capacity. Humus, and humus is pretty much made from the biological remain of organic content. It improves soil mineral composition. It provides food for decomposers and for detritivores, and it's pretty much form a home for a lot of soil organism. And of course, it holds a whole abiotic factor water. Now, water is a habitat, and of course, it is looked at as aquatic. It could be estuary, where we're going to be finding brackish water, a lake where we might find salt water, brackish water, or water that is not saline. Then we have our rivers and the sea. Water is indeed a abiotic factor, and here we have some water flowing. And the faster the flow, the more oxygen is available in the water, that bulk oxygen. Water forms a aquatic ecosystem and is pretty much the habitat for many organisms. Now, the distribution and survival of these organisms in the aquatic environment is impacted by biotic factors such as temperature, salinity of the water, turbidity, speed of flow, wave action, light, dissolved oxygen, nitrates, and of course the availability of water. Now, turbidity speaks to how murky the water is, how transparent the water column is measured using a salinity refers to the amount of salt dissolved in water, and it affects the buoyancy in the water. The concentration affects the osmotic process between organism and the water. Hence, concentration of a water is very important as organisms become adapted to specific habitat. Now, if a saltwater fish that is not adapted to fresh water is placed in fresh water, the fish will have water move into its cells, causing the death of such a fish. Now, if the freshwater fish is placed in salt water, what is likely to happen? Tell me in the comments below. Some organisms, like salmon, are adapted to live in both types of water as it can pass urine to regulate its blood concentration. Now, it's important to note that all cells are impacted by salt concentration. So it's fair to say that all organisms will be impacted by the salinity of water. Speed of flow and wave action. Speed of flow speaks to river, wave action might speak to lake and the sea. Now, aquatic organisms rely on the movement of water for movement, food, and of course, oxygen. Now, the change in flow or tide could impact organisms' habitat and survival, as there are some organisms that are not able to cope in the deepest of water or the slowest movement of water or the fastest movement of water. They are not able to cope inland. They have to just be at that area of transition, as it were, for the wave, just to get some amount of water for food and to get some amount of water for hydration, but they just could not live directly into the sea or into the water body. The transitional zone is this area that better suits them. Flowing water increases the level of dissolved oxygen, and dissolved oxygen is represented as DO. So if the water is flowing, or as we're seeing the wave action, the oxygen available will be increased. Now, this oxygen is used for respiration organisms. Let's look at the temperature, which significantly speaks to how organisms are distributed. Now, the right temperature ensures that enzymes in the organism can work or function properly. As it were, for human, we would require a temperature of about 37 degrees, somewhere there, so as to ensure that the enzymes are able to function properly. Now, if water is too hot, it reduces the dissolved oxygen in the water and could lead to acidification of the water as a result of increased carbon, which will, of course, leave lesion or sores on marine life, animals, so on and so forth, and this would cause for greater. Now, cooler water holds more dissolved oxygen. If the water is too hot, it will lead to coral bleaching. Now, climatic factor would include things like wind. We're seeing a tree there. Climatic factor plays a major role as abiotic factor. They influence the distribution of organisms. Some are more impacting in the terrestrial space. These include, but are not limited to, wind, water, availability of water, humidity, temperature, light, nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and of course pH, some of which would have been repeated in other types of abiotic factor. Light intensity, if we observe, we're seeing a nocturnal bird. This is particularly a owl, and this bird does better at night. Light forms an important part of all ecosystems as plants use light for photosynthesis, and of course, other organisms are going to benefit from plants as plants are ultimately making food for themselves and other organisms. Now, the intensity and the duration of the light also impact the rate of photosynthesis. And plants like the fern tend to grow in shaded area. They have special adaptation as they are able to produce more chlorophyll to capture the limited sunlight that becomes available when it does. Now, lighting helps to make the distribution between nocturnal and diurnal organism. Lighting actually helps the distribution. Now it allows them to feed, reproduce, and escape predator. So the lighting is particularly important to organisms, be that they are more active at night, as it were, with nocturnal organism, are more active at day, as it were, with diurnal organism. Now migration and hibernation are also impacted by lighting. Now, some plants also rely on intensity of the light to flourish or to do well, while others require low light intensity. Wind. We're seeing there a bee being involved in pollination. Wind contains atmospheric gases like oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon dioxide. Oxygen is needed for, of course, aerobic respiration. Carbon dioxide is used in the process of photosynthesis, and nitrogen for the formation of pollutant also travel in the air, and it has a negative impact on organisms. Wind is important in the process of nation and seed dispersal. It aids in transpiration and evaporation. But wind is very, very important in enhancing the distribution of organisms. Plants in windy areas have thicker leaves and may have branches with stunted growth. Now, wind enhance and force the migration many animals and may move pathogen over multiple land masses. Humidity is pretty much the amount of water particles suspended in the air, and it is very, very important for the distribution of organism as it impacts transpiration and evaporation. It could also cause dehydration as organisms just feel like they're having enough water, tend not to drink water, leading to dehydration. Water is supplied by precipitation, water bodies, and irrigation, and water forms the solvent for most chemical reaction, used as transport medium, and is used to cool organisms. It helps the soil to crumble well, allowing soil organisms to move easily. Water forms a major part of the photosynthesis process. It is needed for germination, and animals use it to help with the process of digestion. Temperature plays an important role in the dispersal of organisms, as many organisms are adapted to narrow temperature range. High temperature denature enzymes affects the breeding pattern of polar animals and desiccate some organisms. However, is suitable for animals of the desert. Animals become adapted to particular temperature and will do better in areas where these temperature pretty much is facilitated. Temperature affects the rate of photosynthesis, germination, and breeding. Low temperature also affects the activities of enzymes, and some organisms molt during low temperature. Thanks much for watching. I am Mr. Wilson from CSEC Biology, TCP. You can find us online at tcp-academy.teachable.com. You've just watched a video for the CSEC Biology on abiotic factors, produced by TCP Academy. Thanks much for watching. Please be reminded to like, share, and subscribe. When you subscribe, be reminded to click the notification bell and select all. Leave us a comment in the chat below.